The day has done all it needs to do. Now only stillness remains. Let your thoughts loosen, like threads unraveling in the dark. What comes next is not to solve or to chase, just a quiet story, drifting close. Perhaps it's a voice that remembers you, or a silence that has waited patiently. Let it meet you where you are, and let it lead you gently into rest. The wind howled across the Wyoming plains, carrying the faint perfume of roses, though no flowers bloomed in the snow-dusted valley. Clara Hawthorne pulled her shawl tighter, her boots crunching against the frozen earth as she trudged toward the abandoned ranch. The townsfolk of Red Hollow called it cursed, whispering of lights flickering in windows, long shattered, and laughter echoing where no one lived. Clara didn't believe in ghosts, but she believed in debts, and the ranch held answers she needed. Her father, Samuel Hawthorne, had vanished 3 years ago, leaving behind a ledger filled with cryptic notes and his single name, Elias Kane. The man had owned this ranch before it fell to ruin. Before he disappeared into the winter of 1878, the same winter her father began his secret trips out here. Clara had been 16 then, too young to question her father's absences. Now, at 19, with her mother wasting away and creditors knocking, she had no choice but to follow his trail. The ranch loomed ahead, its sagging porch and boarded windows, like a face too tired to speak. She paused, catching her breath, and noticed a faint glow from the upper floor. Not a lantern's steady burn, but something softer, like moonlight trapped in glass. Her heart quickened, but she pressed on, reasoning it was a trick of the dusk. The door creaked as she pushed it open, revealing a parlor coated in dust. A chandelier hung crookedly, its crystals catching the last rays of sunset, and a piano stood in the corner, its keys yellowed like old teeth. Clara set her lantern on a table and scanned the room. Papers littered the floor, some bearing her father's handwriting, others scrawled with unfamiliar names and dates. She knelt, gathering them, when a sound stopped her. A woman's voice, humming a melody, faint but clear. It came from upstairs. Clara's hand hovered over the knife in her coat pocket, a gift from her father for protection. She wasn't superstitious, but the air felt heavy, like it held secrets it didn't want to share. The humming grew louder as she climbed the stairs, each step groaning under her weight. At the landing, a hallway stretched into shadow, doors lining either side. The glow she'd seen from outside pulsed from the last room on the right. She moved toward it, her lantern casting long fingers across the walls. The humming stopped abruptly, replaced by a whisper, too soft to make out words but urgent, almost pleading. Clara reached the door and pushed it open. The room was empty save for a cracked mirror and a single chair facing a window. The glow was gone, but the scent of roses filled the air, sharp and sweet. On the chair lay a silk ribbon, crimson as fresh wine, tied in a delicate bow. She picked it up, her fingers trembling. It was warm, as if someone had just held it. A floorboard creaked behind her. She spun, lantern raised, but no one was there. Only the mirror reflected her pale face and wide eyes. Yet, for a moment, she thought she saw another figure beside her, a woman in a white dress, her hair dark as midnight. Clara blinked, and the image vanished. Her breath fogged in the cold, and she backed toward the door, ribbon clutched in her hand. Downstairs, she spread the papers on the table, trying to focus. Among them was a letter, its ink faded but legible. It was addressed to her father from Elias Kane, dated December 1878. "Samuel," it read, "you've seen her, haven't you? She won't let me go. Meet me at the ranch before the snow buries us all." Clara's pulse raced. Who was her? And why had her father kept this secret? The night deepened outside, the wind rattling the windows. Clara lit a fire in the hearth, its warmth barely touching the chill in her bones. She tucked the ribbon into her pocket, its warmth lingering like a promise. She didn't know what she'd find here, but she felt watched, not by eyes, but by something older, something waiting. As she sorted through more papers, a photograph slipped from the pile. It showed a woman, young and striking, with dark hair and a faint smile. On the back, in her father's hand, were the words, "Lillian Kane, 1876. Clara stared at the face, her mind racing. Was this the woman from the mirror? And what tied her to this place, to her father, to Elias? The fire crackled, and the scent of roses drifted through the room again, unmoored from any source. Clara looked toward the stairs, her heart torn between fear and curiosity. Whatever haunted this ranch, it knew her father's name, and now it seemed it knew hers too. Clara woke with a start, her neck stiff from dozing at the table. The fire had died to embers, and the ranch was silent save for the wind clawing at the windows. The photograph of Lillian Kane lay before her, its edges curling in the damp air. Clara traced the woman's face, her smile both gentle and distant, like she tried to recall a song half forgotten. The scent of roses had faded, but the crimson ribbon in her pocket still held its strange warmth, a reminder of the mirror upstairs and the mirror's fleeting vision. She stood stretching and lit her lantern again. The papers she'd gathered last night were a tangled mess of clues. Her father's ledgers, Elias Kane's letter, and the photograph. One note in her father's hand caught her eye, scrawled on a torn envelope. "Lillian's debt be paid by the solstice, or she'll bind us both." The winter solstice was days away, Clara realized, her stomach tightening. What debt? And why had her father never spoken of it? The floorboards creaked above, a slow, deliberate sound, like footsteps pacing. Clara's hand went to her knife, her pulse quickening. She told herself it was the house settling, but the air felt charged, as if someone listened just beyond her sight. She climbed the stairs, lantern held high, drawn to the room with the mirror. The hallway was colder than before, her breath clouding in the dim light. The door to the room stood ajar, though she was certain she'd closed it. Inside, the mirror gleamed faintly, its crack splitting the reflection of the empty chair. Clara set the lantern down and approached, her boots soft on the warped floor. She held up the ribbon, its crimson stark against the gloom. "Who are you?" she whispered, half expecting an answer. The mirror showed only her face, but the air grew heavy, the scent of roses blooming sharp and sudden. A shadow flickered in the glass, too quick to catch. Clara turned, heart pounding, but the room was empty. She faced the mirror again, and there, just for a moment, stood Lillian Kane. Her white dress shimmered, her dark hair loose, and her eyes held a sorrow so deep it stole Clara's breath. The image vanished, but the ribbon in Clara's hand grew warmer, almost pulsing. She stumbled back, clutching it, and fled downstairs. In the parlor, she tried to steady herself, spreading the papers again. Among them, she found a deed to the ranch, signed by Elias Kane and witnessed by her father in 1876. A second document, dated a year later, transferred the land to a man named Thomas Reed, a name she didn't know. Why had her father been involved? And why was the ranch abandoned if it had been sold? The wind outside shifted, carrying a faint hum, like the melody she'd heard last night. Clara froze, listening. It came from the piano in the corner. She approached, her lantern casting shadows that danced across the keys. The humming stopped, but a single key pressed down, soft and deliberate, its note lingering in the air. Clara's skin prickled. She backed away, her eyes darting to the stairs, half expecting to see Lillian descending. Instead, a knock came at the door. Clara jumped, her knife in hand before she realized it. Who could be out here, miles from Red Hollow, in the dead of night? She moved to the window, peering through a gap in the boards. A man stood on the porch, his coat dusted with snow, his hat pulled low. He knocked again, sharper this time. "Miss Hawthorne?" he called, his voice rough but familiar, like someone she'd met in passing. Clara opened the door a crack, knife hidden behind her. "Who's there?" The man tipped his hat, revealing a weathered face and gray eyes that seemed to see too much. "Name's Jonah Reed," he said. "Heard you were out here, stirring up old dust. Figured I'd better warn you." His gaze flicked past her into the parlor, as if he sensed something she couldn't. "Warn me about what?" Clara asked, her grip tightening on the knife. Jonah's eyes met hers, steady but guarded. "This place ain't yours to claim, and it ain't empty neither. You've felt it, haven't you? The cold that ain't just winter?" He paused, glancing at the ribbon peeking from her pocket. "And you found her things." Clara's heart skipped. "Who's her? Lillian Kane?" Jonah's jaw tightened. "You're digging where you shouldn't, girl. Your pa learned that the hard way." He stepped back, snow crunching under his boots. "Leave by morning, or you'll owe more than you can pay." Before Clara could answer, he turned and vanished into the storm. She shut the door, her mind racing. Jonah Reed. Was he kin to Thomas Reed, the man who'd bought the ranch? And what did he know about her father? The piano keys sounded again, a low, mournful note, and the scent of roses curled around her, soft as a whisper. Clara sank into a chair, the ribbon warm in her hand. Jonah's warning echoed, but she couldn't leave, not yet. The answers were here, in the papers, the mirror, the woman who wouldn't stay gone. She looked at Lillian's photograph, her smile now seeming less gentle, more knowing. Whatever debt her father owed, Clara feared it wasn't his alone anymore. Clara sat by the fire she'd rekindled, its light pushing back the shadows but not the unease coiling in her chest. Jonah Reed's warning lingered, his words about debts and cold that wasn't just winter gnawing at her. The crimson ribbon lay on the table beside Lillian Kane's photograph, its warmth faded but its presence heavy, like a keepsake from someone she'd never met yet somehow knew. The ranch was silent now, the piano still, but the scent of roses drifted faintly, as if woven into the walls. She turned to the papers, desperate for clarity. The deed to the ranch, signed by Elias Kane and her father, was dated 1876, the same year as Lillian's photograph. The transfer to Thomas Reed a year later puzzled her. Why sell a ranch only to let it rot? And Jonah Reed, with his cryptic warning, had to be connected. Was he Thomas's son, brother, or something else? Clara's fingers traced her father's handwriting on the envelope. Lillian's debt be paid by the Solstice. The Solstice was 3 days away, and the weight of that deadline pressed harder. A creak came from the porch, softer than Jonah's heavy boots. Clara's hand went to her knife, her eyes fixed on the door. The wind had died, leaving an eerie quiet. She stood, lantern in hand, and peered through the window's cracked board. No one was there, but a fresh set of footprints marked the snow, small and delicate, leading from the porch to the barn across the yard. They hadn't been there when Jonah left. Clara's breath caught. She told herself it could be a stray animal, but the prints were too precise, too human. She pulled on her coat, tucking the ribbon and photograph into her pocket, and stepped outside. The cold bit her cheeks as she followed the tracks, her lantern casting a trembling glow. The barn's door hung ajar, its hinges rusted. Inside, darkness swallowed the light, but the scent of roses bloomed stronger, almost dizzying. She stepped in, her boots scuffing, hay long gone stale. "Hello?" she called, her voice thin in the vast space. No answer came, but a soft rustle sounded from the loft above. Clara's heart pounded as she climbed the ladder, each rung creaking under her weight. At the top, she raised her lantern, revealing bales of hay and a small trunk tucked in the corner. The rustle had stopped, but the air felt alive, like a breath held too long. Clara approached the trunk, its lock broken and lid slightly raised. She opened it, revealing folded fabric, a shawl of white silk embroidered with roses. Beneath it lay a journal, its leather cover cracked. She opened it, recognizing Elias Kane's slanting script. The first entry, dated November 1876, read, "Lillian is restless tonight. She speaks of a promise I cannot keep. Samuel swears he'll help, but I fear we've both been fools." Clara's hands trembled. Her father's name leapt from the page, tying him to Elias and Lillian in a way she couldn't yet grasp. She flipped forward, finding an entry from December 1878, the winter Elias vanished. "She won't leave," it read. "Her sorrow binds her, and now us. Samuel says we must pay her price, but I cannot bear it. The roses bloom in the snow, and I know she's near." The final words were scrawled, almost illegible. "Forgive me, Lillian." A whisper brushed Clara's ear, soft as a sigh. She spun, lantern swinging, but the loft was empty. The shawl in the trunk shifted as if caught by a breeze, though the air was still. Clara backed toward the ladder, journal clutched to her chest. The scent of roses followed her, clinging like a memory. She descended and hurried back to the house, locking the door behind her. In the parlor, she spread the journal beside the other papers. Elias's words painted Lillian as more than a woman, something bound to this place by sorrow and promises. Clara's father had been part of it, but how? She opened the photograph again, studying Lillian's face. The smile now seemed pleading, her eyes fixed, not on the camera, but on something just beyond. A knock startled her, sharp and insistent. Clara gripped her knife, approaching the door. "Who's there?" she called. "It's Jonah," came the gruff reply. "Open up, Miss Hawthorne. We need to talk." Clara hesitated, then unlatched the door. Jonah stood there, snow in his hair, his face grim. "You didn't leave," he said, stepping inside without invitation. His eyes fell on the journal and ribbon. "And you're digging deeper? What do you know about Lillian Kane?" Clara demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. "And my father?" Jonah sighed, rubbing his jaw. "Lillian was Elias's wife. She died here, winter of '76. Your PA and Elias, they made a deal to ease her passing, but it went wrong. Now she lingers, and she's got her hooks in you." Clara's mouth went dry. "Died? Then who's upstairs? Who's leaving footprints?" Jonah's gaze darkened. "You saw her, didn't you? In the mirror, maybe, or out there?" He nodded toward the barn. "She ain't at rest, and she won't be till her debt's paid. Your PI tried, and it broke him." "What debt?" Clara pressed, stepping closer. "Tell me." Jonah shook his head. "Ain't my place. But you keep that ribbon, you're inviting her closer. Leave it, leave the journal, and go home, girl." Clara's jaw tightened. "I'm not leaving till I know why my father disappeared." Jonah stared at her, then turned for the door. "Then God help you," he muttered, stepping into the night. Clara locked the door, her mind spinning. Lillian's journal, the ribbon, the footprints, they all pointed to a truth she wasn't ready to face. The fire flickered, and the scent of roses curled around her, again, soft and insistent, like a hand reaching from the dark. Clara's hand shook as she set Elias Kane's journal on the table, its pages heavy with secrets she couldn't yet unravel. The fire cast wavering shadows across the parlor, and the scent of roses lingered, faint but unyielding, like a memory refusing to fade. Jonah's words echoed in her mind. Lillian Kane, dead since 1876, yet somehow bound to this ranch, her sorrow a debt that trapped her father and Elias. Clara's fingers brushed the crimson ribbon in her pocket, its warmth a quiet pulse against the cold. She wanted to heed Jonah's warning to leave it behind, but it felt like abandoning her father's truth. The solstice was 2 days away, and the note in her father's hand, Lillian's debt be paid by the solstice, loomed like a clock ticking down. She opened the journal again, scanning Elias's entries for anything that might explain the deal he and her father made. A passage from October 1876 caught her eye. Lillian's fever worsens. Samuel brought the preacher, but she refuses his prayers. She speaks of roses, of a promise I made under the stars. I swore I'd never leave her, but how can I stay if she goes? Clara's chest tightened. Elias's love for Lillian bled through the ink, but so did his fear. A soft thump came from upstairs, like a book falling from a shelf. Clara's head snapped up, her knife in hand, before she could think. The house had been silent since Jonah left, but now it felt awake, its walls listening. She stood, lantern raised, and climbed the stairs, her boots soft on the creaking steps. The hallway was dark, the door to the mirror room closed. She paused, heart pounding, then pushed it open. The room was as she'd left it, the cracked mirror, the chair, the window staring into the snow. But on the floor lay a small book, its cover velvet and worn. Clara knelt, picking it up. It was a diary, its pages filled with a woman's delicate script. The first entry, dated June 1875, began, "Elias brought me roses today, red as the dawn. He says this ranch will be our home forever." Clara's breath caught. This was Lillian's voice, captured in ink. She sat on the chair, reading by lantern light. Lillian wrote of her love for Elias, their dreams of a family, but as the entries progressed, a shadow crept in. By August 1876, her words grew frantic. The fever takes more of me each day. Elias weeps, but I see her in my dreams, a woman in white, promising rest if I give her my heart. I told Samuel, and he swore to find a way. Clara's pulse raced. Her father again, tangled in Lillian's fate. Who was this other woman in white? A chill brushed her neck, and the lantern flickered. Clara looked up, her reflection in the mirror wavering. For a heartbeat, Lillian stood behind her, her white dress glowing faintly, her eyes locked on Clara's. The scent of roses surged, sharp and sweet. Clara spun, but the room was empty. The diary slipped from her hands, falling open to a final entry. December 1876. I am gone, yet I remain. Elias, forgive me. Samuel, keep your vow. Clara's hands trembled as she picked up the diary. Lillian had died, but her words suggested something else, a presence that lingered. She tucked the diary into her coat, her mind racing. The woman in white from Lillian's dreams, was she the key to the debt? And what vow had her father made? Downstairs, she spread the diary beside Elias's journal and the photograph. The pieces fit unevenly, like a puzzle missing its heart. Lillian's death, her dreams, the promise Elias couldn't keep, her father's vow, all tied to this ranch. Clara's eyes fell on the deed to Thomas Reed. Why had Elias sold the land so soon after Lillian's death? And where was Thomas now? A rustle came from the porch, softer than the wind. Clara grabbed her knife, her nerves frayed. She peered through the window, expecting Jonah or footprints, but saw only snow falling thick and silent. Yet the rustle came again, closer, like fabric brushing wood. She opened the door, lantern held high, and stepped onto the porch. The cold stung her face, but the scent of roses was unmistakable, looming in the air. Lillian? Clara whispered, her voice trembling. No answer came, but the snow at the porch's edge was disturbed, as if someone had stood there moments ago. Clara's lantern caught a glint in the snow, a silver locket half buried. She knelt, brushing it free. It was heart-shaped, engraved with roses. Inside was a miniature portrait of Lillian, her smile radiant, and a lock of dark hair. Clara's fingers closed around the locket, its metal warm despite the cold. She returned to the parlor, setting it beside the ribbon and diary. The objects felt like pieces of Lillian herself, left for Clara to find. But why? Was Lillian guiding her or drawing her deeper into a trap? A knock rattled the door, sharp and urgent. Clara's heart leapt. Jonah? She called, knife ready. No, the voice answered, low and unfamiliar. It's Thomas Reed. Open the door, Miss Hawthorne. We've got to settle what your father left behind. Clara froze, the name from the deed now standing on her porch. She gripped the knife tighter, unsure if Thomas was friend or foe. The fire crackled, and the scent of roses curled around her, soft as a whisper, urging her to decide. Clara stood frozen, her hand tight on the knife, the voice of Thomas Reed lingering beyond the door. The fire in the parlor flickered, casting long shadows that danced across Lillian's diary and the silver locket, its rose engraving glinting like a secret caught in the light. The scent of roses hung heavy, curling through the air as if urging her forward. Thomas Reed, the man who'd bought the ranch from Elias, was no longer a name on a deed, but a presence demanding answers. Clara's heart thudded, torn between caution and the need to know what tied him to her father's disappearance. She cracked the door, knife hidden behind her back. A man stood there, taller than Jonah, his face shadowed under a wide-brimmed hat. His coat was worn, dusted with snow, and his eyes, sharp and green, studied her with a mix of curiosity and wariness. "Miss Hawthorne," he said, his voice low, carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much. "I'm Thomas Reed. May I come in?" Clara hesitated, then stepped aside, keeping the knife close. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone steady despite the tremor in her chest. Thomas removed his hat, revealing graying hair and a face lined with years. He glanced at the table, his eyes lingering on the locket and ribbon. "You found her things," he said almost to himself. "I warned your father not to come back here, but he never listened." "Warned him about what?" Clara demanded, stepping closer. "Lillian? The debt? Tell me what you know." Thomas sighed, settling into a chair without asking. "It's a long story, and not a kind one. Your father, Samuel, and Elias Kane were friends of mine once. We were young, foolish, thought we could bend the world to our will. Then Lillian got sick and everything changed." Clara sat across from him, the locket warm in her hand. Elias's journal said she had a fever. She wrote about a woman in white promising rest. What happened to her? Thomas's gaze drifted to the fire, his voice softening. Lillian was Elias's world. When the fever took hold, he was desperate. Samuel and we tried to help, but doctors were useless. Then Lillian started talking about her dreams, a woman who offered to take her pain away for a price. Elias thought it was delirium, but Samuel, he believed her. Clara's throat tightened. "What price?" Thomas leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers. "A promise, sealed in ways I don't fully understand. Lillian said the woman in white wanted her heart, not to take her life, but to keep her here, tied to this place." Elias agreed, thinking it would save her. Samuel swore to help, to make sure the promise was kept. But when Lillian died, something went wrong. She didn't pass on. Clara's fingers tightened around the locket. "You're saying she's still here? A ghost?" Thomas nodded slowly. "Not the vengeful kind, not like the stories. She's lost. Her sorrow holds her, and the promise Elias and Samuel made binds them too. When Elias sold me the ranch, he thought it'd break the tie, but it only made her angrier. She thinks we betrayed her." Clara's mind raced, piecing together the journals, the ribbon, the footprints in the snow. "And my father? Where is he?" Thomas's face darkened. "Samuel came back here, winter of '78, trying to set things right. He said Lillian was calling him, in dreams, in mirrors. I told him to stay away, but he went to the barn one night, alone. I found his horse the next day, but he was gone." "I'm sorry, Clara." Her chest ached, the weight of his words pressing down. "Gone? You mean deed?" "I don't know," Thomas admitted. "But this place takes what it wants. You're here now, stirring it up. That ribbon, that locket, they're hers. She's watching you." A chill ran through Clara, the scent of roses sharpening. She glanced at the stairs, half expecting to see Lillian's figure. "Why me? I didn't make any promises." Thomas's eyes softened. "You're Samuel's blood. She sees him in you. And with the solstice coming, she's stronger. Whatever debt your father owed, she might think you can pay it." Clara stood, pacing, the locket heavy in her hand. "Then tell me how to end it. How do I free her and my father if he's still out there?" Thomas shook his head. "I don't know the whole of it. Elias tried, Samuel tried, and they both paid for it. But Lillian's diary, her things, they might hold the answer. Be careful, Clara. She's not cruel, but she's desperate." A soft hum drifted from the piano, the same melody Clara had heard her first night. Thomas froze, his face paling. "She's here," he whispered, standing. "I shouldn't have come." Before Clara could stop him, he grabbed his hat and headed for the door. "Wait." She called, but he was already outside, his footsteps fading into the snow. The hum stopped, leaving silence thick as the cold. Clara locked the door, her heart pounding. She opened Lillian's diary again, searching for clues. An entry from November 1876 read, "The woman in white came again. She says my heart will bloom forever, but only if Elias and Samuel keep their vow. I fear what it costs them." Clara's eyes stung. Her father had carried this burden, and now it was hers. The fire dimmed, and the scent of roses swelled, wrapping around her like a shawl. Clara looked at the locket, its rose engraving seeming to pulse. She didn't know what Lillian wanted, but she felt the weight of her gaze, soft and sorrowful, waiting for Clara to decide. Clara's fingers lingered on the silver locket, its rose engraving warm against her skin, as if it held a heartbeat of its own. The parlor was quiet, the fire's embers casting a faint glow across Lillian's diary and the crimson ribbon. Thomas Reed's words hung heavy. Her father gone after chasing Lillian's call, bound by a vow to a woman who wasn't fully gone herself. The scent of roses drifted through the room, soft but insistent, like a voice whispering just out of reach. Clara felt Lillian's presence, not as a threat, but as a plea, and the solstice, now a day away, loomed like a door about to open. She opened Lillian's diary again, her eyes scanning for anything that might untangle the vow her father and Elias had made. An entry from October 1876 caught her attention. "The woman in white says my love for Elias can endure, but only if we give her what she lost." Samuel found a book in red hollow, old and strange, with words to bind a heart. "I fear its cost, but Elias is desperate." Clara's pulse quickened. A book? Could it still be here, hidden in the ranch's shadows? She stood, lantern in hand, and moved through the parlor, searching shelves and corners coated in dust. The air grew colder as she neared the staircase, the scent of roses sharpening. A soft creak came from above, like a door easing open. Clara's hand tightened on her knife, but she climbed the stairs, drawn to the mirror room. The hallway was dark, the air thick, as if the house held its breath. The door to the room stood open, though she'd closed it after finding Lillian's diary. Inside, the cracked mirror gleamed faintly, reflecting the lantern's glow. On the chair lay a small book, its cover black leather, embossed with a single rose. Clara's heart skipped. She approached, her boots soft on the floor, and picked it up. The pages were brittle, filled with spidery script in a language she didn't know, alongside sketches of roses and strange symbols. A note in her father's hand was tucked inside, for Lillian's heart, to keep her safe. "God forgive us." Clara sank onto the chair, the book heavy in her lap. This was what her father had found, what he and Elias had used to make their vow. She flipped through it, finding a passage marked with a ribbon, not crimson, but white. It described a ritual to bind a heart to the earth, using roses and a promise spoken under the solstice moon. The words chilled her. The heart remains, but the soul lingers, tethered by love and loss. A whisper brushed her ear, soft and urgent, saying her name. Clara spun, lantern raised, but the room was empty. The mirror showed only her reflection, yet the scent of roses surged, dizzying. She clutched the book, her mind racing. Had Lillian agreed to this ritual, or had Elias and her father acted alone? And what did it mean to bind a heart? She returned downstairs, spreading the book beside Lillian's diary and Elias's journal. The pieces were coming together, but the picture was fractured. Lillian's dreams of the woman in white, the ritual, the vow, all pointed to a desperate attempt to save her, one that trapped her instead. Clara's father had tried to fix it, and now she held the tools he'd left behind. A soft tap came from the window, like a branch brushing glass. Clara looked up, her knife ready. Outside, snow fell thick, but no branch touched the window. The tap came again, deliberate. She approached, peering through the gap in the boards. A figure stood in the yard, too far to see clearly, draped in white. Clara's breath caught. The figure didn't move, but the scent of roses bloomed stronger, curling around her like a shawl. She backed away, heart pounding, and turned to the fire, stoking it to push back the cold. The figure couldn't be Lillian, she told herself, not truly. Yet the diaries, the locket, the book, all felt like breadcrumbs leading her deeper into Lillian's story. Clara opened the black book again, studying the ritual. It required a rose, fresh and red, placed where the heart was bound. Where was that? The barn where her father had vanished, or somewhere else. A knock rattled the door, sharp and familiar. Clara gripped her knife, her nerves frayed. "Who's there?" she called. "Jonah Reed," came the gruff reply. "Open up, Clara. I saw something out there you need to know about." Clara unlatched the door, letting Jonah in. His face was grim, snow clinging to his coat. "You're still here," he said, glancing at the book and locket, "and you found more than you should." "What did you see?" Clara asked, her voice steady despite the fear coiling inside. Jonah's eyes met hers, hard and worried. A woman in white, standing by the old well behind the barn. She looked at me, then vanished. "You're stirring her up, girl, and the solstice is too close." Clara's mouth went dry. The well? Neither diary mentioned it, but the ritual spoke of earth, of a place where roots could hold a heart. "Show me," she said, grabbing her coat. Jonah shook his head. "Not tonight. It's too dark, too cold. Wait till morning, or you'll end up like your pay." "I can't wait," Clara insisted, the locket heavy in her pocket. "If Lillian's tied to that well, I need to know now." Jonah sighed, his jaw tight. "Then I'm coming with you. But if she calls your name, don't answer." Clara nodded, her heart racing as she followed Jonah into the snow, the scent of roses trailing behind her, soft and sorrowful, like a song she couldn't forget. Clara's boots crunched through the snow, her lantern casting a trembling glow as she followed Jonah toward the barn. The night was thick, the storm easing to a soft flurry, but the cold bit deeper, as if the ranch itself exhaled winter. The scent of roses clung to her, faint but unyielding, threading through the air like a whisper. The black book, tucked inside her coat with Lillian's locket and the crimson ribbon, felt heavier with each step. Jonah's warning about the woman in white at the well echoed in her mind, but so did the ritual's words, a rose placed where the heart was bound. Jonah walked ahead, his shoulders tense, his own lantern swinging. "Stay close," he muttered, glancing back. "This place plays tricks at night." His eyes flicked to the barn, its silhouette looming against the snow, then beyond it, where the well hid in the dark. Clara nodded, her knife a quiet weight in her pocket. The solstice was tomorrow, and the urgency of her father's note, Lillian's debt be paid, pressed against her chest. The well, unseen in any diary, felt like the heart of the mystery, a place where Lillian's sorrow might be tethered. She pictured her father, drawn here 3 years ago, chasing the same truth, and her throat tightened. They passed the barn, its door creaking in the wind. Clara glanced inside, half expecting footprints or the shawl from the loft, but saw only shadows. Jonah led her around the back, where the ground dipped into a hollow. There, half buried in snow, stood the well, its stone rim cracked and mossy. A wooden cover lay askew, as if recently moved. The scent of roses surged, sharp and sweet, and Clara's lantern flickered, though no breeze touched it. Jonah stopped, raising his light. "There," he said, pointing. "That's where I saw her." Clara stepped closer, her heart pounding. The snow around the well was disturbed, not by footprints, but by a faint pattern, like petals scattered and swept away. She knelt, brushing the snow aside, and found a single rose, red as blood, frozen in the earth. Its petals were pristine, untouched by frost, and it pulsed with warmth when she touched it. "This is it," she whispered, her breath clouding. The ritual's rose. Jonah's face paled. "Don't touch it, Clara. That's her heart, or what's left of it." Clara pulled her hand back, the rose's warmth lingering on her fingers. Lillian's diary said the woman in white wanted her heart. The ritual bound it here, didn't it? That's why she can't leave. Jonah nodded, his voice low. "Your pa and Elias thought they were saving her, tying her love to this place so she wouldn't fade. But love don't work like that. It trapped her sorrow instead." Clara stood, the black book heavy against her chest. "Then we unbind it. The ritual must have a way to let her go." Jonah's eyes narrowed. "You think it's that simple?" Samuel tried, and he's gone. "You don't know what you're asking." "I'm asking for my father," Clara snapped, her voice breaking. "If there's a chance he's still out there, I have to try." Jonah sighed, rubbing his jaw. "The book might say how, but it's old magic, older than us. And Lillian, she might not want to go. She's been waiting a long time." A soft hum drifted from the well, the melody Clara knew from the piano. Her lantern flickered again, and the rose in the snow seemed to glow faintly, its petals trembling. Clara's hand went to the locket, its warmth matching the roses. "She's here," she whispered, her eyes scanning the dark. Jonah grabbed her arm. "Don't speak her name. Let's get back to the house. We'll look at the book, but no more tonight." Clara wanted to argue, to stay and face whatever lingered, but the hum grew louder, wrapping around her like a shawl. She followed Jonah back to the ranch, the rose's image burned into her mind. Inside, the parlor was warmer, but the scent of roses followed, curling through the air. Clara spread the black book on the table, its pages brittle under her fingers. The ritual to bind a heart was marked, but further on she found another, its title inked in red, to release what lingers. The passage was short, its words stark. Speak the name of the bound. Offer a rose of your own, and break the tie under the solstice moon. The heart returns, but the soul must choose. Clara's pulse raced. A rose of her own. What did that mean? And what if Lillian's soul chose to stay? Jonah read over her shoulder, his face grim. You'd need a fresh rose, and there ain't none blooming in this snow. And breaking the tie, it might call more than Lillian. More? Clara asked, her voice tight. The woman in white, Jonah said. The one Lillian saw in her dreams. She's no ghost, Clara. She's something older, something that takes what's offered and don't let go. Clara's hands trembled, but she closed the book, her resolve hardening. I'll find a rose, and I'll face her if I have to. Jonah shook his head. You're as stubborn as your pa. I'll stay till morning, but you're on your own after that. The fire crackled, and the scent of roses softened like a sigh. Clara looked at the locket, Lillian's face smiling faintly in the miniature. Tomorrow was the solstice, and the well waited its rose a promise and a trap. She didn't know if she could free Lillian or her father, but the hum lingered in her memory, calling her back to the dark. Clara sat at the parlor table, the black book open before her, its brittle pages whispering of rituals and roses. The fire crackled, pushing back the chill, but the scent of roses lingered, soft and heavy, like a memory woven into the air. Jonah had left at dawn, his face grim, promising to return before the solstice moon rose tonight. The ritual to release Lillian's heart weighed on Clara, its words stark. A fresh rose, her own offering, and Lillian's name spoken under the moon. But where would she find a rose in this frozen valley? She traced the locket's rose engraving, its warmth a quiet pulse. Lillian's diary lay beside it, its final entry haunting. I am gone, yet I remain. Clara felt the weight of her father's vow, his attempt to free Lillian, and his disappearance at the well. The rose she'd found there, red and unfading, was Lillian's heart, bound by the ritual. To unbind it, Clara needed her own rose, a symbol of her will to let Lillian go. A soft hum drifted from the piano, the melody now familiar, like a lullaby from a dream. Clara's eyes flicked to the keys, but they were still. The hum grew, wrapping around her, and the locket in her hand warmed, almost burning. She stood, her heart quickening, and moved to the window. The snow had stopped, the sky clear, with dusk painting the valley in shades of violet. The well waited behind the barn, its rose calling her back. Clara nodded, but her eyes stayed on the dark, the shadow lingering in her mind. She sat, clutching the locket, and opened the black book to a new page, one she'd missed before. It spoke of the woman in white, not by name, but as the keeper of promises, who claimed hearts offered in love or despair. To end her hold, the ritual said one must return what was given at the place of binding. The well, Clara thought, her resolve hardening. At dawn she'd search it, for her father, for Lillian, for the truth. The fire flickered, and the scent of roses returned, faint as a sigh, urging her toward the morning's light. Clara woke to dawn's pale light seeping through the parlor windows, the fire reduced to ash. The black book lay open, its pages whispering of the keeper of promises, The woman in white who claimed hearts offered in desperation. The locket rested in her hand, cool now, its rose engraving dull. The scent of roses was faint, a lingering thread, but the ranch felt quieter, as if Lillian's hum had finally stilled. Jonah slept in a chair, his knife across his lap, his face etched with worry even in rest. Clara stood, her body aching from the night's tension. The well called her, the thud they'd heard after the ritual echoing in her mind. Her father had vanished there, and the keeper's whisper, "You offer much," suggested a price still unpaid. She tucked the locket and book into her coat, the crimson ribbon, a soft weight beside them. Today she'd search the well, for her father, for answers, for an end to the debt that bound them all. Jonah stirred, his eyes snapping open. "You're up early," he said, voice rough. "Going to the well?" Clara nodded, her jaw tight. "I heard something last night after the ritual. If my father's there, or any trace of him, I need to know." Jonah stood, grabbing his lantern. "I'm with you, but we're careful. That keeper ain't gone, and she's watching." They stepped into the morning, the snow crisp underfoot, the solstice moon long set. The valley was still, the barn's silhouette stark against the gray sky. The well waited behind it, its stone rim dusted with fresh snow. The roses, Lillian's, and Clara's were gone, leaving only a faint imprint in the earth. Clara's heart sank, but she knelt, brushing the snow aside, finding nothing but frozen ground. Jonah set his lantern down, peering into the well's dark mouth. "Cover's loose," he said, lifting the wooden lid. It groaned, revealing a black depth that swallowed the light. A faint scent of roses drifted up, mixed with damp stone. Clara leaned forward, her lantern casting a trembling glow. The walls were rough, lined with moss, and a rusty ladder descended into shadow. "I'm going down," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coiling inside. Jonah grabbed her arm. "Not alone. Tie a rope, at least." He pulled a coil from his pack, securing it to the well's rim and around her waist. "If you feel anything wrong, tug twice." Clara nodded, tucking her knife into her belt. She climbed down, the ladder creaking, the air growing colder with each rung. The scent of roses strengthened, sharp and sweet, and the locket warmed faintly against her chest. At the bottom her boots hit wet stone, and her lantern revealed a shallow pool, its surface rippling. Something glinted in the water, small and metallic. She knelt, reaching in, her fingers closing around a man's pocket watch, its chain tangled with silt. Her heart leapt as she recognized it, her father's engraved with his initials. S.H. She clutched it, tears stinging her eyes. "Papa," she whispered, the word echoing in the dark. A soft hum began, not Lillian's melody, but something older, deeper. The water rippled, and a shadow moved across it, not Clara's reflection, but another's. The woman in white stood behind her, her face hidden, her dress flowing like mist. Clara's breath caught, the locket burning now. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling but firm. The shadow didn't speak, but the hum grew, and the watch warmed in her hand, matching the locket's pulse. Clara's mind raced, the black book's words clear, to end the keeper's hold, return what was given. Her father had offered his heart, his vow, to save Lillian. Now, Clara held his watch, a piece of him, and the locket, a piece of Lillian. "I returned this," Clara said, placing the watch in the water. "Take it and let him go." The hum softened and the shadow flickered, its presence less heavy. The water stilled, and the scent of roses faded, like a sigh released. Clara's lantern flickered, and the woman in white was gone, leaving only silence. She tugged the rope twice, and Jonah pulled her up, his face pale as she emerged. "You found something," he said, eyeing the watch in her hand. "My father's," Clara said, her voice breaking. She took it, Jonah. "The keeper. I think I gave it back." Jonah's eyes softened. "Then maybe he's free. And Lillian too." Clara clutched the watch, its weight grounding her. The well was quiet now, the air lighter, but questions lingered. Had she truly ended the debt, or only paid part of it? The locket was cool, the ribbon still, but the ranch felt different, as if a breath had been let go. "We should go," Jonah said, glancing at the sky. "Town's waiting, and you've done enough." Clara nodded, her heart heavy with the watch's weight. She'd found a piece of her father, but not the whole truth. As they walked back to the house, the snow began to fall again, soft and quiet, covering the well's secrets in white. Clara stood in the parlor, the morning light filtering through the boarded windows, casting soft patterns across the table where Lillian's diary, the locket, and her father's pocket watch lay. The ranch was quiet, the scent of roses gone, replaced by the faint must of old wood and snow. Jonah waited outside, his horse packed, ready to guide her back to Red Hollow. The weight of the well's secrets, the keeper's whisper, and her father's watch pressed against her heart, but the ranch felt lighter, as if Lillian's sorrow had finally eased. She opened the locket one last time, Lillian's miniature portrait smiling faintly, her eyes no longer pleading, but calm. The crimson ribbon, once warm, was cool now, a simple keepsake. Clara tucked it into the diary, closing it gently, as if sealing a letter. The black book with its rituals and warnings she left behind, its pages too heavy with promises she'd never make. Her father's watch. Its ticking stopped years ago. She slipped into her pocket, a piece of him to carry home. The well had given her an answer, but not the one she'd hoped for. Her father was gone, his vow to Lillian paid with his heart, offered to the keeper in desperation. Yet returning his watch had felt right, a gesture to release him, and perhaps Lillian too. The woman in white hadn't returned, her shadow absent since the well, but Clara sensed her presence lingering, not in malice but in waiting, as if the ranch itself was her domain. She stepped onto the porch, the snow sparkling under the rising sun. Jonah stood by his horse, his face softer now, the worry lines eased. "You ready?" he asked, holding the reins of her father's old mare, saddled and waiting. Clara nodded, her coat heavy with the watch and locket. "I think so. Did I do enough, Jonah? For her, for him?" Jonah's eyes met hers, steady and kind. "You gave them a chance to rest, Clara. That's more than most could have done. Lillian's gone, I feel it. And your pay, he'd be proud." She climbed into the saddle, the valley stretching before her, its snow untouched save for their tracks. The barn and well stood silent, their secrets buried once more. Clara glanced back at the ranch, its sagging roof and empty windows no longer heavy with sorrow, but simply old, worn. The piano's hum, Lillian's melody, was a memory now, soft and distant, like a song sung to sleep. They rode toward Red Hollow, the cold air sharp but clean, the sky clear above the plains. Clara's thoughts drifted to her mother, frail but waiting, and the creditors who'd soon come knocking. The answers she'd found wouldn't pay their debts, but they'd given her something else, a truth to hold, a piece of her father to keep. She touched the watch in her pocket, its metal cool but grounding, a reminder of his love, his mistakes, his sacrifice. Jonah rode beside her, quiet but steady, his presence a comfort. "What'll you tell your ma?" he asked, his voice low. "The truth," Clara said, her breath clouding in the air. "That he tried to help a friend, and it cost him. That he's at rest now, I hope." Jonah nodded, his eyes on the horizon. "And the ranch? You coming back?" Clara shook her head, the locket's weight light against her chest. "No, it's not mine to claim. Let it sleep." The trail wound through the valley, the creek's frozen shimmer catching the light. Clara thought of the rose she'd plucked there, its thorns pricking her, its petals offered to free Lillian. She wondered if the bushes would bloom again, or if the keeper's touch had stilled them forever. The ranch faded behind them, swallowed by snow and distance, and Clara felt a quiet release, as if a thread had been cut. Red hollow smoke rose in the distance, a promise of warmth and rest. Clara's heart was heavy, but not broken. She'd faced the well, the keeper, and Lillian's sorrow, and she'd walked away with her father's watch, a piece of him to carry forward. The valley stretched wide, its silence soft, and Clara rode on, the weight of the past easing with each step. Not all spirits seek to frighten. Some just wish to be remembered. If their tale lingered with you, let it rest with your breath. Sleep well tonight. And if you hear a whisper in your dreams, maybe it's just the end of the story.